202. Let's get to The Devil's Rejects, which came out in 2005. Once again done by Zombie. It stars Sid Haig, Sherry Moon Zombie, Bill Moseley, William Forsythe. And the synopsis is the murderous backwoods Firefly family take to the road to escape the vengeful Sheriff Wydell, who is not afraid of being as ruthless as his target. So this one was a first-time watch for me. I knew it was a sequel, a continuation with these characters, but that's about it in terms of narrative and plot for the movie. And I had heard mainly good things about the movie. A lot of people, I think, seem to say this is the best Rob Zombie movie to date. On first viewing, it is about on par with House of a Thousand Corpses. It would be middle towards the top of his films ranking wise. I do think that it is mostly for the better, a very stark difference in style from House of a Thousand Corpses, in that the first one, like I said, he was really trying to impress people, at least that's what I got, and every style he could think of, every cinematic flourish. And in this, he's like, all right, I'm in Hollywood. Now I can tone things down a little bit, focus on other elements of the story, and so I don't have to over embellish the style as much. So this one feels a lot more normal, quote unquote, at least in terms of a Rob Zombie film. Getting right to the beginning of the movie, the shootout at the house I like a lot, and he does a good job frequently throughout this one of making you believe, all right, they're gonna get caught now. They're gonna get killed. Like a dozen cops show up with assault rifles and shotguns, and they surround the house, and they all start shooting, and you think, all right, we're good now. Like, these guys are finally gonna be taken down. This is it. Even though it's fairly ridiculous with how they get out and how they're almost entirely unharmed, even though they had a dozen rifles shooting at them. I do like the homemade body armor, even though it's silly, it's at least creative. That's not what I was expecting to happen with their defensive plan. And then they get out, even though the mother gets captured. There is, cutting too quickly, sorry, the scene, the dream sequence with Captain Spaulding and the hooker is so gross. And I mean, it's intentionally that. For one thing, it's super graphic, but the dialogue between the two of them, like the dirty talk, and it constantly showing close-ups of Captain Spaulding's rotting teeth is just like, it's really vomit-inducing. And I mean, I guess it's effective in that way. It's not meant to be erotic, I would think. The whole motel sequence is really wild. The family gets captured, or the couples get captured, and then there's the cutting off the face. There's the reveal in the bathroom of the bodies with the blood and Devil's Rejects written on the wall. And I do like that name. That's a pretty good name for a gang or a serial killer group. One thing that I was going to mention at some point in this review that I didn't really mention in Corpses is another style, cinematic choice of zombie that I don't totally love. It's one of those bittersweet things, is he also feels the need to always have the cameras jammed into characters' faces all the time. And so I guess that's meant to create claustrophobia. And with a movie like this, where he is really showcasing the gore and the brutality and the sadism and all that, I get that to an extent, but he really, in all ways, he doesn't really have an off switch in that sense. And so he doesn't say, all right, this is important. I want this to be in your face. I'm going to zoom in on a character or on this scene, and then not so much in another. Instead, it's like, all right, I'm always thinking, okay, is this something I should care about? Is this important dialogue? Is it important character moments? Whatever it might be, it's either all important, none of it is important, it's never clear. Which maybe that's what he wants to do. Maybe that's just his idea, what he likes. That's fine. But regardless of whatever the actual motivation of him, the creative choice by him, it's really, I'd say 50-50 in terms of it working and not working. Few other things that I like. The soundtrack is very solid. I think he has a good mixture of well-known hits, but also some deep cuts. He also, and I guess you can just look at it broadly, where like the Coen brothers, for example, they are usually seen or referred to as Americana filmmakers, where they look at different aspects of American culture and tell a story within that. But it's much more, obviously, much more grounded and restrained. And Coen brothers are vastly better filmmakers to me. In some ways, Rob Zombie is almost the horror backwoods Americana filmmaker. And he does that better than most. And he makes that very iconic. Also, another neither here nor there creative choice to Zombies films is that most, not all, but most Rob Zombie protagonists look like Rob Zombie. They all have long, dirty blonde, scraggly hair, like they're in a metal band. They have tattoos, a scraggly beard. They usually are wearing tank tops and, or sleeveless shirts, raggedy jeans. Even Michael Myers in his Halloween films look like Rob Zombie. He's just beefed up like crazy. So that's something that I can't not always think of, okay, is this just being egotistical? Is it lazy? And Otis, I think his name is in this, looks like Rob Zombie, if you know what Rob Zombie looks like. I do find, though, that overall the movie is fairly straightforward. It is a meandering escape film of these three killers trying to get out of Dodge and also cause chaos along the way. There's also the moment or the sequence at the fun town where there's the brothel, and that's another thing in Rob Zombie movies. Usually there's hookers of some kind, the sexualizing of older women. And I'm not trying to rag or nitpick Rob Zombie's movies, but he opens himself up for more, not criticism necessarily, but just general observations. For some reason, and I know that she's his wife now, he, especially in this, feels the need to show Sherry Moon Zombie's butt all the time. Like, especially like the top of her butt crack. She always pulls her pants down just enough or makes some joke about her butt. And then he also zooms down onto it when it makes no sense in the context of the scene. And I know that he is just a very explicit filmmaker when it comes to nudity and all that. But even for me, I was like, all right, this is excessive. Like, we get it. She's your wife, but also that's kind of weird. That's just me, though. The final sequence capture of the rejects at the house is good, and where the sheriff is able to give them payback, at least for a little while. The house being set on fire. However, and that brings me to another point, I can totally get into slashers, serial killers, whatever, having a larger than life, seemingly unkillable nature in the context of a movie, but his lack of subtlety in the end of this film really bugged me, because even though there are a lot of idiotic things that people do, the fact that this guy, the sheriff, has been hunting these three, and he went to so much trouble to find them, to capture them, and to torture them in this house. He lets Sherry Moon Zombie go in order to have a cat and mouse chase, I guess, to have more sadistic revenge fun with her, which in some ways I get, but realistically, someone like that who had been hunting these people would kill that person on the spot. And even Danny Trejo and the other thug who had the chance to kill all three of them at the brothel, I was like, wait, why aren't you shooting them? And I know it's a movie, whatever. I'm just talking about it for the sake of conversation. It sort of fell off for me because I'm like, all right, we're going. It's sort of playing realistically in terms of how they're able to get out alive and getting out of jams and all that. But He sets the house on fire. Somehow, in the span of 5, 6, 7 minutes, the two men don't die, even though they're surrounded by gasoline in a burning wooden house, and somehow they're untouched. The cat and mouse chase obviously sets you up for the predictability of someone's going to come and save her, or she's going to find a weapon because they're on a farm. Like, yeah, go run off into the night on a farm where there's tools, there's weapons, more than likely. So that, even though the final moment they are all shot in the car, I did like how that was done with the intercutting of the, I guess, home video footage. And the soundtrack was good, and that final just bloodbath, Bonnie and Clyde sort of thing I liked. And so I'm glad that it had that epilogue as opposed to just seeing Sherry Moon Zombie and the three rejects get away. Overall, I did like it. I think at some point I would like to go back and revisit it, and I could see it going up over time. And yeah, that is a heavy 3.5 out of 5.